சாப்பிட்டோம். இது 2 சாப்பிட்டோம் அப்ப மட்டும். சரியா? என்னது?
Hello, so very good afternoon. Pranav
Very good
Dave is
afternoon,
here.
Pranav bhai. Very good afternoon.
Am I audible
Yes.
and visible? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to give brief introduction. Dr. Kamal Mehta is Professor, Department of English, Saurashtra University, Rajkot. He has headed the department for quite some time, for a few years, and now he is working as professor. He has completed 2 major and 3 UGC minor research projects on Rajarao, Naipaul, Gujarati and Indian English short stories. He has published 8 books and around 20 papers and literary translations. One more book is with the press and would soon come out. He is member of Board of Studies, MS University, Vadodara, North Gujarat University, Patan, Dr. Ambedkar Open University, Ahmedabad, and Central University of Rajasthan, Gujarat Technological University, Ahmedabad. He also worked as director BCUD for 5 years and director IQAC for his university for 6 years. So Kamal Mehta is a family member of Sardar Patel University Department of English. He has done lot as a lecturer, as a reader, as a professor. He is workaholic and he is on every front, everywhere. So we welcome you, sir. And now I hand over to you to speak on Indian poetics and overview. Thank you very much, sir. Please.
I thank you, Pranav. Thank you very much. Am I audible again
You are audible.
and visible also?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
No, not visible.
Not visible. How come I have already started my now?
Yes, visible.
Okay. What? Dear friends, I welcome all of you on this session on Indian poetics, primarily for your net examination. And therefore, what I would highlight would be slightly different from what I would be otherwise doing when I'm dealing with any topic of Indian poetics. You know very well that now net examination is absolutely and completely objective. And therefore, there is no question on your part as a student to describe anything. You are supposed to find that description which is most appropriate. And therefore, what is important is comprehension of concepts and ideas rather than finding out better examples for revealing the things. So, what I would do is rather than going deep into any matter as such, we would be remaining confined to by and large as many concepts, as many ideas, as many terms as possible, and understand them in the light of the overall history of Indian poetics. You know that poetics particularly means Sahitya Charcha, Kavya Charcha, Vangmay Charcha. It refers to discussion, deliberations, theorizations, explications of everything that pertains to literature. The literature can be written literature as well as oral literature, whichever literature. India also had very, very long traditions and very well developed traditions of poetics. Unfortunately, for many years, the Western world did not acknowledge this. They thought that only Greek and later on the Romans, they had some literary sense and therefore they studied poetics. But Indian poetics is as old as, or even I would say older than, either the Greek or the Latin traditions of poetics. Bharat Muni, who happens to be the first poetician, the first aesthetician of Indian poetics, is actually not the first one. Why he is not the first one? He is not the first one because in Natya Shastra, he himself refers to several other poeticians who have preceded him. To give a few names, for example, he says Brahma, Nandakeshwar, Tunda, Vasuki, Shilali, Kushashva, Kohal. And these are the people who in fact preceded him. Unfortunately, their works are not available to us. Their works are either destroyed or their works are somehow missing, because India has lost a lot of knowledge because the vandalizers, they burnt many libraries. And so we do not know in which libraries these books were there and they are no more available. But it certainly proves that if Bharat Muni refers to these 5 to 6 names, then they would not be ordinary people. They also would have contributed something significantly. That means the traditions of poetics must have started long before Bharat Muni. But from among the available, you can say, poetic texts and the poeticians, we can say that Natya Shastra is the first Indian text of poetics, and Bharat happens to be the first, you can say, poetician from India, and he belongs to 2nd century BC. So we have, you can say, evidences of rich, and mind you, Natya Shastra is very well defined, very well structured, having a great depth of the entire matter called Natya. It gives an overall complete picture of Natya. Now, no idea would have matured so much in the beginning itself. There must have been so many other types of ideas, which later on must have kept on enriching themselves. And finally, in Bharat Muni, it would have become very rich. And therefore, Bharat is first among the available, you can say, poeticians. And Natya Shastra is first among the available texts of Indian poetics. Anyway, rather than going into it, it begins with Bharat and with Pandit Jagannath. That is in 17th and 18th century. In fact, Indian poetics, basically in Sanskrit, comes to an end. It doesn't mean that Indian poetics comes to an end. So we have also to know the other aspect of Indian poetics. The way the predecessors of Bharat Muni are not available, and we cannot say that no traditions existed before him. In the same way, since people had stopped writing in Sanskrit, because after, in fact, Kshemendra belongs to 10th century. Virtually, Indian poetics in Sanskrit comes to an end in 10th century. But we get first very powerful, you can say, theoretical work called Rasa Gangadhar by Pandit Jagannath in 17th or 18th century. We can say that Sanskrit continued in some corners of the country. But actually, Sanskrit had come to an end in 10th century, and Sanskrit was gradually replaced by either Arabic or Persian. But certain families, some groups of people, some scholars, they continued to write in Sanskrit. But that particular writing did not come out, it was not published, otherwise it would have been destroyed. And therefore, it did not see the world as such, but they remained in the form of manuscripts. But Pandit Jagannath was part of the court of Jahangir and later on Shah Jahan. And therefore, he was an important person. He was a courtier. And he was very close to Dara Shikoh, the elder brother of Aurangzeb. And Dara Shikoh gave lot of importance, lot of protection to Pandit Jagannath. And therefore, Sanskrit traditions continued. And we know very well that Dara Shikoh translated Upanishads into Persian. And he must have done it with the help of Pandits like Pandit Jagannath. So in 18th century, the last text comes to an end. And then 19th century onwards, even Arabic and Persian are also replaced by English. But literary thoughts continued in English. So what I want to say is the other point, as I said, that you cannot say that before Bharat, poetic traditions did not exist. And you cannot say that after Kshemendra, or if you want to go later, after Pandit Jagannath, the Indian poetic traditions came to an end. They did not come to end. They continued to come and they continue to come even today. But now they come not in Sanskrit or not necessarily in Sanskrit. Now they come in all the Indian languages, including English and Sanskrit and Persian and Urdu, you can say. So Indian poetic traditions are a continuous, you can say, it is a flow like a river. God knows from which century BC up to the present moment. Anyway, one point. Second point is, when you look at Indian poetics, then primarily we mean Indian poetics in Sanskrit. Now I'm giving another meaning which is a popular meaning. And as far as exam is concerned, we have to go by popular meaning. So when we say Indian poetics, then we primarily refer to Indian poetics in Sanskrit. And so far as Indian poetics Sanskrit is concerned, there are totally 7 schools. There are 7 schools. These 7 schools are the Rasa school, the Alankar school, the Riti school, the Dhvani school, Vakrokti school, Auchitya school, and Ramaniyata school. Rasa, Alankar, Riti, Dhvani, Vakrokti, Auchitya, and Ramaniyata. These are the 7 schools of Indian poetics. When I say the 7 schools, what I mean is that these 7 schools have one, you can say, acharya of each. Each school has one acharya, one principal, you can say, theorist, and one principal book. Therefore, we call it a school. And then there are many books written on each one of them. So if, for example, we take Rasa, then Bharat Muni is the acharya of Rasa school. He is the propounder of the Rasa school of Indian poetics. And Natya Shastra happens to be the basic text of Rasa school. And then number of people have written other books also, which refer to Rasa, or they explain one or the other aspects of Rasa, or they add into the Rasa. How, for example, Bharat Muni himself speaks of only 8 Rasa. Later on became 9, then 10, then 11. By the time we reach Bhojraj, it becomes 108. There are 108 rasas. So this is, all of them depend on the basic concept of Bharat Muni, his idea, his theory, and they take it further. They take it deeper. They add one or the other aspect to the already existing rasa theory. And therefore, they are called other explicatory texts. One is the basic text, the primary text, and then there are other texts which are written primarily to explicate the theory. So Bharat is a propounder of rasa theory. So let me give the name of all the other propounders. Bhamaha is the propounder of Alankar theory or the Alankar school. And the basic text of Alankar school is Kavya Lankar. If you do Sandhi Vichhed, it becomes Kavya Alankar. The embellishment of literature. Because in Sanskrit, Kavya doesn't mean poem, Kavya means literature. Because it can be in prose or versical form, and it can be so many other things. So Bhama is a propounder of the second school, which is Alankar school, which came into existence in 6th century, almost after 800 years of Bharat Muni. And all of you would agree with me that traditions would not have ended. And therefore, it is possible that number of other texts or number of theories who existed between Bharat and Bhama during those 800 years may also be missing. You cannot say that the traditions ended all of a sudden. They cannot end. So he is in 6th century. Then third person who gave his own theory is Vaman. And he gave the theory of Riti. Riti means style. Alankara means embellishment. Riti school has the basic text called Kavya Alankar Sutra Vritti. Kavya Alankar Sutra Vritti. That is the text written by Vaman. And Vaman wrote this book in 9th century. Again, after a gap of 300 years. But during these 300 years, number of other theories existed and their works are available, like Dandi and others, who are very powerful. But why I'm not talking about them? Because they did not give a special theory. They did not initiate a new school. The way Rasa was a school, Alankar was a school. Then the third school which came into existence was Riti school. And there is no other school available between Alankar and Riti. But Dandi does speak of what is an ideal literature or ideal text. His book is called Kavya Darsha, means Adarsha Kavya, ideal literary text. Which are the qualities of an ideal literary text? But that doesn't speak of any school. It doesn't give you, a tool to understand, to discuss, to evaluate a certain text or any text written in literature, because a school should be applicable to everything that is available in literature. Anyway, so Vaman gives the Riti school. Fourth school is Dhvani school. This Dhvani school was propounded by Anandvardhan, and that was again in 9th century. He is almost a contemporary of Vaman, and his book, which is the primary book of Dhvani school, is Dhvanyaloka. Dhvanyaloka. Then, in the next century, comes Vakrokti, and the propounder of the Vakrokti school is Kuntak. And the primary book that Kuntak wrote was Vakrokti Jivitam. Vakrokti Jivitam means he refers to Vakrokti as the life of Kavya. The Jivitam. Jivitam means the element which is responsible for the life. He wrote this book in 10th century, Vakrokti. In the same century comes another person, and he propounds a new school called Auchitya school. Auchitya means propriety, the school of propriety. And the propounder of the school is Kshemendra. He is Kshemendra. And his book is called Auchitya Vichara Charcha. Auchitya Vichara Charcha. And then, as I said earlier, from 10th century to 18th century or 17th century, again a gap of 7 to 800 years. In fact, nothing is available to us. And then comes Pandit Jagannath. And Pandit Jagannath propounded new school called Ramaniyata. And this school is propounded in his book, which is the primary book of the school, is called Rasa Gangadhar. And he gives a new concept, new idea of Rasa, Alankar, Artha, and so on and so forth. And there he coins a new word called Ramaniyata, and he says it is Ramanitya, it is Ramaniyata, which is the key aspect of any kavya. Let me again repeat. These are the 7 schools: Rasa, Alankar, Riti, Dhvani, Vakrokti, and Auchitya. And then 7th is Ramaniyata. If you want to refer to their propounders, then Bharat, Bhama, Vaman, Anandvardhan, Kuntak, Shemendra, and Pandit Jagannath. If you want to refer to books, then Natya Shastra, Kavya Alankar, Kavya Alankar, Sutra Vritti, Dhvanyaloka, Vakrokti Jivitam, Auchitya Vichara Charcha, and Rasa Gangadhar. Now, when I say these are the 7 schools, then why are they called schools? They are called schools because each school finds out the key aspect of Kavya, the defining quality of Kavya. According to Bharat, Rasa is the defining quality of Kavya. If a certain work of art doesn't have Rasa in it, it is not literature at all. For Bhama, it is Alankar. If a text doesn't have Alankar, it is not literature. Alankar is the defining quality of literature. It may have ras, it may not have ras. If it has Alankar, then only it qualifies to be literature. For Vaman, it is the Riti, which is the defining quality of Kavya. For Anandvardhan, it is Dhvani, which is the defining quality of Kavya. And similarly, Vakrokti, Auchitya, and Ramaniyata. Now, see the beauty. In Indian poetics, every school, in fact, critiques all the preceding schools. Bhama would not propound his school directly. He will refer to all the schools which are available. He will critically examine all the schools. He will then disagree with them, and then he will say what is missing in it. The way we do in research. That whatever somebody has already said, I need not say. But whatever is left out by others, then I must say. Or whatever has been said by somebody, but it needs some modifications, then I do the modification. Somebody has said something, but it is too much. I must reduce something, and therefore it do. So Khandan and Mandan is essential in every school. So if there are 7 schools, then all the 7 schools are interrelated. Every school, in fact, takes a complete note of the preceding schools and then adds something. Not like the Western poetic traditions, that whatever comes to your mind, even if 100 people have already said this, you say, and then say, this is my copyright. The entire, you can say, Western poetics, as somebody, I forget the name of the critic, has said, is nothing but a footnote to what Aristotle and Plato have said. Means they are not saying anything new. They are not propounding new ideas. All the ideas which you come across, they are all available in either Aristotle or Plato, either directly or indirectly. It is not necessary for somebody to take note of the preceding schools, critique them, and then propound new. You are free to propound your school, irrespective of what others have said, which is not the case in Indian poetics. And therefore, Indian poetics is like a river, a single river, in which new ideas keep on coming. Anyway, I hope this must be clear. Now, as far as the basic history of Indian poetics is concerned, then the history of Indian poetics is divided into 4 ages. Because in case you have some objective question on the history of Indian poetics, there are 4 ages or 4 periods of Indian poetics. First period is called pre-Anandvardhan period. That is all the schools which existed before 9th century. So before 9th century, in fact, whatever occurred is included into the first period called pre-Anandvardhan period. Pre-Anandvardhan because Anandvardhan is the central figure in Indian poetics, and therefore all others are called pre-Anandvardhan. And this pre-Anandvardhan include Bharat, Bhama, as well as Vaman. These three. Second period, 10th, 9th century onwards, from 9th to almost you can say 11th century, is called Anandvardhan period, which is the most fruitful you can say period of Indian poetics, most impressive period of Indian poetics, because during this period, it gave number of you can say theories, number of critics. Of course, so far as the schools are concerned, again three schools came up: Dhvani school, then Vakrokti school, and then Auchitya school. But in addition to these three, in fact, it also saw some very powerful figures like Rajshekhar, Mahim Bhatt, Abhinav Gupta, Mukul Bhatt. These are very powerful people, and their books are as good as any you can say primary basic text of one or other school. Only they did not propound in school, but in order to understand literature well, in fact, these people have contributed so significantly. For example, how can you ignore Abhinav Gupta? Without Abhinav Gupta, neither Anandvardhan nor even you can say Bharat would have become so popular. In fact, they became so popular, and for that, who is primarily responsible? Abhinav Gupta. He gave his book called Dhvanya Lokalochan. Similarly, Rajshekhar takes a complete view of poetry. His book is called Kavya Mimamsa, which is very relevant even today. In order to understand literature better, one must read Kavya Mimamsa. He will tell you how to interpret, how to evaluate literature. And so is the case with number of others. So this period has remained very, very fruitful, very significant, and very impressive. That is second period. So first period from ancient time up to 9th century, that is pre-Anandvardhan period. 9th century to 11th century is Anandvardhan period. And then we have third period, which is not called post-Anandvardhan, because there are two periods. The first period is called, third period is called Mammat period. Because now, by 11th century, new schools had stopped coming. And what was happening now in Indian poetics? It is called the age of reconciliation or conciliation. That we have poeticians coming up, writing books, and they are taking note of all the schools, judging them, evaluating them, and examining them in the light of one another. And what they are doing is that they are not taking extreme, you can say, step the way the schools take, because they say that ras is the only thing. Somebody would say, no, alankar is the only thing. These people believe it is not so. Other things are also there. One can be primary, but other things are equally important. So, what is the importance of alankar? What is the importance of, you can say, vakrokti? What is the importance of auchitya and so on and so forth? And during this period, Mammat happens to be the most powerful person, and therefore the age is given the name of Mammat period. Mammat Acharya wrote his famous book Kavya Prakash, that is in 11th century. You have Hemchandra Acharya from Gujarat, who wrote Kavyanusasanam. You have Bhojraj, whom I referred to. You have Vagbhat, and so on and so forth. So this is Mammat period, which continues up to, you can say, 14th century. And then from 14th to 18th century, you have fourth period. And this fourth period is called Vishwanath period, because Pandit Vishwanath happened to be the most powerful figure of this period. He lived in the 14th century, and his famous book is Sahitya Darpan, the mirror of literature. And in this period, one school comes into existence, and that is Pandit Jagannath's Ramaniyata. But you have other important people like Jaydev, Appaya Dikshit, Vidyadhar, Bhanudat, and so on and so forth. By the time 18th century ended, in fact, significant writing in Sanskrit stopped seeing the day. It did not come for print. It did not come for circulation. If anybody wrote, it remained in the form of manuscript only. So these are the four periods: pre-Anandvardhan period, then Anandvardhan period, then Mammat period, and Vishwanath period. So ancient time to 9th century, 9th century to 11th century, 11th century to 14th century, and then 14th century to 18th century. And during these last two periods, in fact, what primarily happens is reconciliation, bringing together of different ideas. Now going to other aspect, that Indian poetics, discusses all the aspects of literature. For example, it discusses what is kavya, and you've come across number of definitions of kavya. The way we find definitions of kavya in Greek traditions, in Latin traditions, in English poetics, and so on and so forth, because we know about Wordsworth and others who have given their own definition of kavya. In the same way, in Indian poetics, different people have given different definitions of kavya. So, as student, you should also know a few definitions in case there is a question. You are given the definition and you are asked who has given the definition. So I would refer to a few. I remember that you won't be able to remember, but you can note down somewhere. Bhama is the first person to use the word kavya. You know that Bharat doesn't use the word kavya. He uses the word natya. Natya is one of the forms of kavya according to Bhama. Natya is not everything called kavya. Natya is abhinayarth kavya. Kavya which can be enacted, because he gives his own classification of literature. And therefore, his concept of kavya is very broad. And he deals with number of aspects of kavya. And so he is the first person to use the word kavya. And therefore, his book is called Kavya Lankar. And he gives the first definition of kavya. He says, Shabdarthau Sahitau Kavyam. Kavya is that in which there is a beautiful harmony between a word and its meaning. Where word and meaning go hand in hand, that is kavya. This is definition of Bhama.
Excuse me, sir.
Sorry?
Sir, would you just repeat the definition?
I'm not able to hear you properly. Please repeat.
Sir, will you please repeat the definition of kavya?
It is Shabdarthau Sahitau Kavyam. Shabdarthau Sahitau Kavyam. Where Shabda and Arth are Sahita. And from Sahita, in fact, came the word Sahitya. From Uchit came the word Auchitya. In the same way, from the word Sahita came the word Sahitya. Sahita means something which is good for you, something which is helpful to you. Sahitam, one which takes care of your hita, your benefit, your future, or your bright future. Sahitya, what does Sahitya do? Sahitya enlightens your life. And so what is Sahitya? Sahitya is that in which you have Shabda and Earth going hand in hand, or they are in beautiful harmony. Dandi, he gives another definition, and he says, Ishtartha Vyavachinna Padavali. Ishtartha Vyavachinna Padavali. Focus on the word Padavali. It is a series of words. Padavali means a series of words having Ishtartha, having a meaning which is Ishta. Ishta means very good, very significant. We ask question, who is your Ishta Devata? Means which god you worship the most. So Ishta in that sense. So Ishtartha, it has Ishtartha and Vyavachinna. Vyavachinna means well organized. What we call Vyavasthita in our word language. So Ishtartha Vyavachinna Padavali. That series of words which has useful, beautiful, meaningful meaning and has a well organized structure. That is Kavya. This is definition by Dandi. Then Vaman, he gave third definition. He says, Vishishta Padarachana Riti. Vishishta Padarachana Riti. Riti Atma Kavyasya. Kavya is one which has as its soul what is called Riti. A structure of words which has Riti in it. And Riti means, he says, Riti is Vishishta Padarachana. It is not ordinary organization of words. It is Vishishta. It is a special kind of organization. And then he defines the word Vishesho. He says by Vishesho what I mean is, he says Vishesho Gunatma. Means every literary text has certain merits. And these merits, in fact, are the special qualities of that text. They are Vishesh. So when you organize words which have their own merits and which provide merit to the text, in fact, that becomes Kavya. That becomes the soul of Kavya in a way. So if there is no soul, then there is no life, then there is no Kavya also. Vaman is the first person to divide Kavya into two categories or into two parts, not two categories, two parts, Sharir and Atma. So for example, Rasa, Alankar, they form part of the Sharir of Kavya. They are objective, they are visible, they are legible, they are readable. But there is some other quality of Kavya also which is not visible, which you have to understand, comprehend with your sixth sense. Because Atma cannot be visible, but Atma can be felt. And so what is that which in fact stands for this Atma? He says Guna. You'd remember very well, I'll come to it later, that Bhama speaks of Kavya Alankar. And he says that without Alankar, there is no Kavya. An utterance is an utterance, but that utterance becomes Kavya when it becomes figurative, when it is embellished. Because in Shastra, you do not embellish the language. A text of mathematics, a text of physics cannot have similes and metaphors and other things. There you say what you say. There you say what you mean. And there you mean what you say. In Kavya, that doesn't happen. In Kavya, you may say one thing, but you may mean something else. Or somebody else may mean the same thing, but may say something else. Or somebody may say the same thing, but may mean something else. This is possible. This is Kavya. And therefore, Bhama speaks of Shabda Alankar and Artha Alankar. That there are embellishments of the word and there are embellishments of the meaning. And they are put in good harmony. And that makes a certain text a Kavya text, a literary text. What does Vaman do? Vaman picks up the terms from Bhama, and he says that alankars can decorate only the body. Because Bhama had said that if there is a woman, she is really beautiful, but if she has ornaments, then she will appear more beautiful. And therefore, Kavya is a beautiful woman with ornaments. And ordinary sayings are beautiful woman, like that thing. He gives that kind of metaphor. Vaman says that alankars can decorate only the body of Kavya, and which is not very important. You are impressed by the body, you are impressed by the alankar only for some time. What retains you attached is the gun, the qualities, the swabhava, the temperament of the individual. Once you get acquainted with the individual, you are hardly aware of how the person looks like. Then you are more and more aware of the person who he or she is. And what is that? They are his or her qualities, his or her merits. And therefore, he brings in the idea of Kavya Guna. And Kavya Guna are the soul of poetry. If somebody doesn't have a quality but may have very impressive appearance, can you call it Kavya? Vaman says no. If there is a composition which has beautiful embellishment, wonderful use of language, but has no meaning, has no useful meaning, has no, you can say, ishtartha, or doesn't have vishesh artha, then it is not kavya at all. And there can be a kavya which may not have all these things, and even then it can be so impressive. So what impresses you? And therefore he calls it is the riti which is the defining quality. And what is riti? Riti is bringing into the kavya various guna, constructing various guna in kavya. And he refers to 20 kavya guna. And he classifies kavya guna into Shabda Gun and Artha Gun. See, Shabdalankar, Arthalankar, how there is a development. I had said that there is always a kind of improvisation. There is always some kind of addition, modification. So what does Vaman do? He picks up Bhama and then modifies his ideas. He does not reject him altogether. He critiques, but doesn't say he says nonsense. But what he says something which, according to him, is more important, is more valid, is more meaningful. And for him, Kavya Gun are more meaningful. And he speaks of 10 Artha Gun and 10 Kavya Gun. Bhama had also spoken of Kavya Gun, but he had spoken of only 3. And this pen speaks of 10 plus 10, 20. And before, in fact, Vaman, Dandi had already given 10 Kavya Gun, but he had not sub-classified Kavya Gun when he talked about ideal Kavya. And he said that every ideal Kavya has 10 qualities. From that, again, as I said, Vaman he picks up both from Dandi as well as from Bhama. From Bhama picks up classification. From Dandi he speaks of the very terms of Guna. He does not change the term that is given by Dandi. He retains the same 10 terms, but the same 10 terms he classifies into Shabda and Artha Gun. For example, Ojas. The Ojas can be Artha Gun also. Ojas can be Shabda Gun also. So, as a Shabda Gun, what does it mean? As an Artha Gun, what does it mean? Madhurya. As a Artha Gun, what does it mean? As Shabda Gun, what does it mean? He gives a beautiful sub-classification of these 20 qualities. So this is how improvisation is in fact taken further. And later on, as I said, Anand Vardhan and others come. I would say that, in contemporary poetics, irrespective of Indian or Western, in fact, we take note of 4 major aspects of literature or the literature, the world of literature. One, author, then reader, then text and context. In order to comprehend a text in the best possible manner, what you require to do is you need to understand the author, you need to take note of the reader, you need to take note of the text and also the context. It may be the context of the author also, it can be the context of the reader also. Because when context changes, meaning changes. Reader changes, meaning changes. Author and text, they don't change because they are fundamental. If an author has written, even if he is dead, author remains an author. Text, once it is written, it remains the text. But the other two, they keep on changing. And when they keep on changing, the meaning of the text keeps on changing, and our perception of the author also keeps on changing. It is possible that a certain author was a very great author in one age, but then it doesn't prove to be equally important in some new age. A certain text is a great text for a group of readers, but for another group of readers, the same text may be very ordinary text. And mind you, all of them may have their own arguments. They may have their own rationale also for whatever they want to describe. Now, these four concepts, as they are given by I. A. Richards, in fact, if you refer to Indian poetics, then in Indian poetics, all these four aspects have already been taken very serious note of, and they are given a very elaborate treatment. For example, Kuntak. For Kuntak, author is most important. All the four are important, but who is most important? Author. So his entire theory is author-centric. And so much so because he is primarily propounding the idea of marg, what Vaman had called riti, Kuntak calls marg. Otherwise, marg and riti mean the same thing. Bharat uses the word vritti. So vritti also means the same thing, style, the way of saying something, the way of doing something. Now, Kuntak classifies authors with regard to their style. And so there is Sukumar, then Vichitra, Ubhay, like this, isn't it? So you can discuss an author with regard to his style of writing. And his style of writing, that is his personality itself defines his style. And therefore, Sheel leads to Shaili. Sheel is your character, your Swabhav. Your Swabhav will make you write in a certain fashion. If you are Sukumar by personality, whatever you would write would be Sukumar. Like this. And then what every style means. How does a certain author, in fact, do different things and bring literature into existence? So his entire school, his entire theory is author-centric. If I have time, I'll certainly explain when I come to Vakroti. I will not talk of all the 7 because in examination, by and large, only 4 are asked in net because the 4 happen to be most important. And these 4 are those who refer to the 4 aspects. One is Kuntak, who refers to author. Bharat refers to reader. For him, reader is more important. And therefore, where a Ras Nispati should take place? In the heart of the reader, in the mind of the reader. If a certain text fails to arouse rasa in its readers, then that text is not a great text. All great texts, what they do is, they make an appeal invariably to all the readers. And so readers, if something happens to the reader, the entire rasa theory, Vibhavanubhava Sanyogat, Vibhavanubhav, Sanchari Bhav, and the coordination among the 3, the combination of the 3 leads to Rasa Nispati. Now, this entire process takes place in the mind of the reader. And therefore, his entire theory is reader-centric. what happens to it and how does it happen? So how bhav becomes sentiment, it becomes rasa. How there are 8 bhava which correspond to 8 rasa. So for him, reader is important. For Bhamaha, text is important. That there is nothing that exists outside the text. Text is complete in itself, is autonomous, is sovereign, and therefore, Kavya Lankar, in fact, highlights the glory of the language and the text so much, because Kavya or literature is nothing but language. It is nothing but shabda, having some meaning. Same shabda which you use in day-to-day life also. But then that is not kavya. It becomes kavya. So kavya is a specialized use of the same language. But ultimately it remains the language only. And so it is the text. What forms the text? Language forms the text. And therefore, he doesn't go to anything outside the text. And he says, our entire interpretation, study of the text, and the author should also give more and more importance to the text. So it is text specific, you can say school. Kuntak is author specific, Bharat is reader specific, Bhamaha is text specific, and fourth important one is Anandvardhan. Anandvardhan is context specific. Because for him, what is important is meaning. Dhvani is meaning, not ordinary meaning, but extraordinary meaning or the literary meaning, which need not be just dictionary meaning, which need not be just symbolic meaning, which need not be just implied meaning. It is suggested meaning, which is captured by distinguished readers. Or it is dhvani in the sense, it leads to some kind of anuranan, some kind of echo. Dhvani means echo. When you read a text, then you are able to hear an echo of something else which is not referred to. For example, when you read, say, the Fairy Queen, then it also reminds you of number of other things which have been happening in the world since time immemorial. What is it? The conflict between the good and evil. How good and evil cannot go together. They cannot live peacefully because it is not possible. Nature is not in favor of their being together. The good appears to be weak in the beginning, but it gets support. The evil is always powerful, but gradually it loses support. And ultimately, who wins? The good. The good is victorious over the evil. You are reminded of this thing. Now, if you are reminded of this thing symbolically, or it reminds you of the history of the Church of England, then that is not dhvani, that is lakshyarth, lakshana. Vyanjana is dhvani. And dhvani emerges out of context. The context in which you live, you are able to interpret the text in that particular fashion, whether you are a writer or you are a reader. Very often, for example, Amish Tripathi, when he writes about Ramayana characters, then he trivializes. He is causing a lot of cultural damage to India because of his alpamukti, you can say alpabuddhi. For example, for him, Ram is not Maryada Purushottam. Ram is a law abider. Being a law abider is one thing, and being a Maryada Purushottam is another thing. Implementing law and law in literal sense is everybody's cup of tea. And Maryada Purushottam is nobody is expecting you to do, but you are doing it voluntarily. When you abide by a law, it is out of fear, out of compulsion, out of no option. number of other things. But when you follow certain thing on your own, then that maryada is a different thing. But for him, maryada is law. Niyam for him is law. આ બધા શું એને કહેવાય English medium school, I forget, because now there are so many other English medium schools. But English medium schools, run by erstwhile missionaries, So they have one definite meaning of every word. So for him, maryada is this. Rule means law. Ram is not law abider. Ram is maryada purushottam. And therefore is trivialize the character of Ram. કદાચ 8 થી 100 વર્ષ પછી રામ તમને એટલા ભવ્ય નહીં લાગે, એટલા મોટા નહીં લાગે, કારણ એ જેમ કેટલાય રાજનેતાઓ થઈ ગયા એને જેમ થઈ ગયા, એને કાયદાનું પાલન કર્યું, એમાં બાંધછોડ નહીં કરી. This is trivialization. આપણી બુદ્ધિ નાની હોય તો આપણો કેમેરો નાનો હોય તો આપણે નાનું જ દેખાય. So Amish Tripathi and number of other writers are there today who are really killing India in one way or the other because of their alpa buddhi and alpa mati. Now this is context, because their context is like this, because their mind is not so broad, they are not able to bring in their range so many things. Whatever comes in their perception, they describe and define as final. And this happens. So he gives context. Context is very important, and it plays a major role in our perception, understanding, comprehension of literature. So all the four which are very important these days, they had been taken note of in Indian poetics as well. This I am telling you so that you can say with pride that Indian poetry is not trivial. Indian poetry is not ordinary. Indian poetry is also equally important. Yeah, the basic difference between Western poetics and Indian poetics is this, that Indian poetics, I mean this Sanskrit poetics, has come into existence and it has been primarily addressing the authors. The Western poetics is primarily addressing the readers. How to understand and interpret literature, for that you have poetics. Here, how to compose literature, for that you have poetics. So whatever is instructed, whatever is suggested, whatever is implied in Indian poetics, it is implied keeping in mind the authors. Therefore, Kavi is very important. Who is Kavi? What are the qualities of a Kavi? How Kavi can become a better Kavi? What Kavi should always avoid? Where Kavi can make mistakes? All such things are issued. Such things are not discussed. They are not addressed in the Western poetics. There, how reader should read, what he should take note of, what he should not get dragged into, these things are discussed. So Western poetics pertains to activities of the readers. Indian poetics pertains to activities of author, and therefore they are different. No doubt, on the basis of whatever they suggested to the authors, it is possible for us to convert into the Western style or the contemporary style. The way it is also possible to convert the Western poetics, keeping the authors in the mind, and for that you will have to do something. And so, this is the basic difference. It doesn't mean that therefore it is not relevant. It is equally relevant. Now, as I said that I want to focus primarily on four: Bharat, Bhamaha, Anandvardhan, and Kuntak. Because you will have, by and large, I would say 90% of the questions come from these four, or maybe sometimes from history. So that I have already referred to. Rasa theory is one of the most impressive theories of the world. The Westerners are so much attracted by Bharat Muni, they are not attracted that much by any other. Though as a student of Indian poetics and number of other scholars of Indian poetics have always said it is Anandvardhan who is on the top. He is the greatest figure in Indian poetics. But for the Western world, by and large, it is Bharat Muni. because Bharat is more understandable. Bharat is closer to what Aristotle has said, no doubt in a different way, and therefore they find him more convenient. The way, for example, India has given number of avatars, but which avatar is very convenient to the Western world? Buddha, and therefore Buddha is found all over the world. Otherwise, you have Ram also, you have Krishna also, you have Vaman also, you have so many others. But why Buddha? Because Buddha for him is more convenient, easy to understand. And therefore, everyone would take what is easy to understand, what is easy to accept, what is easy to practice, isn't it? What is not easy to practice, even if he is very great, then we don't accept. And there is nothing wrong in it. And we are happy that Buddha has gone all over the world and he also represents Indian thought. There is no doubt about it. So the way Buddha is most acceptable avatar to the Western world, in the same way, Bharat Muni happens to be the most acceptable, convenient, you can say, poetician theories from the Indian poetics. And what does Bharat say? Bharat Muni has given the idea of rasa. And he says that there are 8 rasas. And how do the rasa come into existence? He gives a rasa sutra. And in that rasa sutra, he refers to vibhav, anubhav, and vyabhichari bhav. When vibhav, anubhav, and vyabhichari bhav come together, then rasa nispati takes place. Rasa is generated in you. The vibhav refers to context. Is somebody asking question? Hello? Yeah. Vibhav is the context. Context created on the stage with the help of the characters. That is Vibhav. For example, who is the actor? What is his costume? Which type of language does he speak? What is around him? Whether it is a forest or a palace or an ocean. All these things and the stature of the character, they make what is called Vibhav. So what is on the stage as a part of Vibhav? Theatrical, isn't it? Stage arrangement and character on the stage. They make Vibhav. Then Anubhav. Anubhav means actions. What type of actions the actors make, the characters make. Whether the character fights, whether the character weeps, whether the character is feeling afraid, whatever, isn't it? So there are different kinds of anubhav, that is gestures, bodily gestures, facial gestures, gestures from the eyes and so on and so forth. And there can be so many things. So on the one hand, vibhav, then anubhav, and then sanchari bhav. Sanchari bhav means those sentiments which are not visible to us, but which are governing such actions on the part of the characters. Either, he wants to, he hates someone, he loves someone, he dislikes someone, he wants to gain someone, like this. These are different types of bhav, what we call sanchari bhav, not sthai bhav. They are sanchari bhav. Like lobh, lalach, prem, gati, all kinds of things. There are 33 sanchari bhav. These 33 sanchari bhav, anubhav and vibhav, when they come together and they move in the direction of one sthai bhav, there are 8 sthai bhav. In which sthai bhav, in the direction of which sthai bhav they move, accordingly that rasa would be generated. For example, if the activity, or you can say the vyabhichari bhav, sanchari bhav, and vibhav, they happen to be that of a certain thing and moving in the direction of Rati Bhav, which is Sthai Bhav. Every individual is born with 8 Sthai Bhav. If he is a normal human being, Rati, what you call love, isn't it? Has means hasya, laughter. Shok, when you are grieved. Krodh, utsah, bhai, sorry, jugupsa, and vismay. These are the 8 sthai bhav. You will not come across any individual who say that I do not have bhai at all, or I never have rati bhav, or I never feel vismay, or I never feel krodh, I never feel shok. આવો કોઈ માણસ મળે તો he is abnormal. If it doesn't have any one of the 8, or he is beyond this. કાં તો ભગવાન થઈ ગયો તો જુદી વસ્તુ છે. Otherwise, if he is a human being, then he has these 8 sthai bhav. So vibhav, anubhav, and sanchari bhav, they come together on the stage and in the heart of the individual character. They move in a certain direction. They move in the direction of one sthai bhav. Which sthai bhav they move, accordingly ras would be generated. If it moves in the sthai bhav called rati, then sringar, rasa would be generated. If it moves in the direction of the sthai bhav of has, then hasya would be the rasa. It moves in the direction of the sthai bhav of shok, then karun ras would be generated. Like this. If it moves in the direction of utsaha, then vira rasa would be generated. So every individual, it is highly psychological, has 8 sthai bhav, and these sthai bhav, in fact, sthai bhav are on the part of the spectator. A sthai bhav kona che? Spectator na. And what is happening? Something is happening on the stage when they are connected. When they are connected, for example, somebody kills someone. It can be that of krodh also. It can be sringar also. Even out of love also somebody may kill to save somebody. Or it can be karuna also. If somebody is killed, then that killing generates karuna. Certain killing generates sringar. When Ram kills Ravan, then it is for sringar. It may be rodra also. Viraras also, like this. So if something happens, if somebody helps, that help can also be for so many different things. So ultimately, which sthai bhav is touched? And the sthai bhav lies on the part of the spectator, or you can say reader. So happening here or in the text, whatever is happening in the text, that touches that particular part of the reader, and a certain rasa is generated. If the text is powerful, if the stage is powerful, characters are powerful, their actions are powerful, the sentiments which govern them are powerful, they are bound to generate ras among the spectators. So for him, there are 8 sthai bhav, and these 8 sthai bhav are rati, has, shok, krodh, utsah, bhaya, jugupsa, and visma. And the corresponding 8 rasa are, what happens with the students is they often confuse sthai bhav with rasa. Question hoy that out of the 4 given below, find out which one is the rasa or which term refers to bhava. Then you should be able to distinguish. The terms used for rasa are sringar, hasya, karuna, raudra, veer, bhayanaka. Bhaya is bhav, but bhayanaka is ras. Jugupsa is bhav, but vibhatsa is ras. Vismay is bhav, adbhut is ras. So these 8 are rasa. 8 sthai bhav, 8 rasa. There are 8 satvik bhav. Satvik bhav means you express something without speaking, without doing anything. They are your gestures. With the help of your gestures, in fact, you reveal what is inside you. Satvik bhav means inner bhavs. They are stambha. For example, you become stambha. Stam means murti banija, as if you have lost life. You get shocked. That is stamba, is a sattvic bhav. Swed, you start perspiring. It is a sattvic bhav. You feel romanch, and there are gestures on your face. That is a sattvic bhav. Swarabhang, you want to say something, but you say something else. In fact, you are not able to control your speech, and you start bubbling. That is also a sattvic bhav. Kampan, you start shivering. There is also an expression. You start becoming vivarna. Vivar means so much shock. You are under so much shock that your color in fact fades away. You become so dim. You become so down in your mood. That is vivaranata. And ashru, you start shedding tears, which can also be one of the sattvic bhav. Tears may be of joy, pain, shock, whatever. And murcha, somebody falls, becomes unconscious. So these 8 are sattvic bhav. So there are 8 sattvic bhav also. So let me again repeat. There are 8 rasa, 8 sthai bhav, and 8 sattvic bhav. And there are 33 temporary feelings. That list I'm going to avoid, but you can certainly refer to rasa theory. There are 33 temporary bhav. Jenke lobh, lalach, bhai, irsha. These are different kinds of temporary feelings. Then vibhav are of 2 types. This you should know. Either alamban vibhav or uddipan vibhav. Alamban vibhav refers to whatever you reveal through characters. Character is also a vibhav, is a part of the context. So whatever part of the context revealed by character is called alamban vibhav. And whatever is revealed through uddipan vibhav is something that promotes, which encourages, which intensifies whatever you want to convey. So out of the context, for example, whenever there is a sringar, then you have flowers, you have birds, you have trees, you will be in the garden. But whenever there is shok, then again birds would be there, but then those birds would be different birds. Trees would be there, but trees would be different trees. You need not be in the garden when you are under shock. You would be in a forest, and forest also during that period when it doesn't have leaves. When there is bhaya, then you can again be in the forest, but then that forest is very thick. So like this, you have to see that uddipan vibhav, the context, other than the character, is uddipan vibhav. So context pertaining to character and context pertaining to everything else other than character. This is rasa theory. If you go to Bhama in 6th century, then Bhama refers to all the aspects of kavya, all the aspects of kavya. For example, what are the objectives of kavya? Why at all literature comes into existence? What are the causes of kavya? That is how kavya comes into existence. What are the literary forms of kavya? What are the kinds of protagonists? All these things are discussed by Bhama. Bhama, for example, also says that literature primarily is written to enrich your understanding of Purushartha Chatushtaya, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. આ ચારની સમજણ સમૃદ્ધ થાય એટલા માટે સાહિત્ય છે. You should come to know what is true dharma, what is true artha, what is true kama, what is true moksha. You should be able to distinguish between different kinds of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. If you are able to understand this well, then your life will be better. And literature helps you understand these 4 things very well. Secondly, literature also makes you understand art very well. And literature also makes you understand the vyavahar, the life very well. You are able to find out the solutions to your problems because you are in touch with literature. So literature does all these things. What is the source of literature or the cause of literature? In Sanskrit, two terms are used. When you say prayojan, it means objective. When you say hetu, it means causes, the reasons. So for Bhama, there are three major sources of kavya. One, the innate faculty. Because you are born with a certain type of faculty that you would compose literature. You are born with those kinds of tendencies in you. And you will always find out the convenient, useful, you can say elements to enrich your faculty. And one day you will start writing. So you are born with some capacity, which he calls pratibha. One reason is pratibha. Because there is pratibha on your part, a personality of a certain type, you are constructing. But it is not the only reason. Secondly, knowledge and wisdom. You may not be, a very pratibhavan individual, but you have studied a lot, you have read a lot, you have interacted a lot, and therefore you have become highly knowledgeable. You have acquired a lot of wisdom. And when you acquire knowledge and wisdom, again, there is a force from within to compose literature. And literature comes into existence. Thirdly, constant practice. So pratibha, then gnan, and third is what he calls there is a Sanskrit word abhyas. Uses the word abhyas. Abhyas is not study. Abhyas is practice. That you may not have pratibha. You may not be having very wide knowledge, but you have started writing, and by continuing to write, you will one day become a man of literature. There are many people who have not gone to schools and colleges, who haven't acquired knowledge, but they have been practicing. And because they are practicing, they are able to compose literature in the course of time. So pratibha, then gnan, and third, abhyas. These three are the main sources of kavya. So if somebody wants to be a kavi, then should try to acquire all the three. He can awaken his pratibha, he can acquire knowledge, and he can do more and more practice. If you do, then literature would come into existence. Bhama speaks of kavya, which is nothing but shabda and arth together. Right? And so he speaks of alankar of shabda also and alankar of artha also. He totally speaks of 36 alankars. There are 36, you can say, types of embellishment. And his text, in fact, he gives examples also. What does it mean by A, by B, by C, by D? Out of these 36, only 2 are Shabdalankar. And all other are Arthalankar. Different ways in which you can construct meaning, or you can construct meaning creatively. It is creative construction of meaning. But Shabdalankar only 2, Anupras and Yamak. Anupras means there is rhythm. There is some kind of pras. And in Yamak, what happens is every new word begins with the same sound or the same letter. That is called Yamak. In Kavya, this happens. This is not what happens in day-to-day talking. But in Kavya, you can have every first word beginning with ka or ga or cha and so on and so forth. Or pras. where you try to rhyme certain thing, either internal rhyming or rhyme at the end of the line. So that is also an example of Shabdalankar. But then there are so many Arthalankar, which means all kinds of things. There are 34. He speaks of 3 guna. Kavya has 3 guna. One is Madhurya, then Ojas and Prasad. Ojas is something which is the height of complexity. Either the idea is very complex or the composition is complex. But that is also embellishment. You say something not directly but deliberately in a complex manner. In literature, you do. So that is called Ojas. Prasad, even very big idea, very tough idea, you can say in a very smooth manner. It is called Prasad. Prasad means prasannata, which makes you joyful, happy. And Madhurya is sweetness. He talks of 2 riti. One is Vaidarbha and Gaudiya. And he says that Gaudiya riti is better riti because Gaudiya is having all the alankars in it. And Vaidarbha is lacking slightly in the alankar. What is important on the part of him is he doesn't speak so much of the merits of poetry, but he speaks of the demerits of poetry. So he has done a lot of work in what is called Kavya Dosha, which are the things which can make your literature weak, ordinary. So he speaks of 3 types of dosha in Kavya, and every poet should avoid letting those demerits, weaknesses enter into his or her work. These dosha are grammar specific, then he says nyaya specific and language specific. Grammar specific means sometimes your construction of the words is such that you are not able to convey the things well. There are kind of grammatical errors. Now, don't take grammar exactly, in terms of linguistic grammar. Here, grammar means also conventions. By conventions, what I mean is that you have to know which word requires to be used at a certain point. If I give an example from Gujarati, for lakada, you know the word lakada. In fact, we have different words like samid, like magbapna. So when you say samid, they are also lakada, but they are used for yagya. Magbapna, when there is an auspicious occasion at home, then use the word magbapna. કે જા મગબાપના લઈ આવ. પણ સ્મશાનમાં જાવ તો શું કેવું પડે? લાકડા લઈ આવી. 2 મણ લાકડા ખરીદો. 20 મણ લાકડા આપો. Would you say 20 મણ સમીદ આપો? Then it is a violation of convention. As a poet, you should know which word should be used at which time, in which context. Every great poet knows this. This is auchitya, in other words, that you follow the conventions very well. So either they are grammar specific, that is, you are not using proper words, or you are not bringing shabda and earth together. So far as grammar is concerned, convention is concerned. Sometimes whatever you are bringing together is not logical, is not convincing. You say something somewhere and then you say something later on which contradicts with it. Then it becomes a weak kavya. It doesn't remain a kavya. Because if you want to show that Othello really loved Desdemona very much, and you also want to show that Othello kills Desdemona, then these 2 things don't go together. But since this happens, you have to show in such a way that the spectators are convinced, yes, under such circumstances, this may happen. But if somebody shows in one scene that they are in great love, and then he kills, and you are not given the reason, the rationale, then it is a dosh. It is a weakness of kavya. And that weakness pertains to nyaya. It is not nyayochitta. And thirdly, language specific. For example, Ram should speak like Ram. and Ravan should speak like Ravan. If you read Mahabharata, there you have variety of characters, and all that many characters belong to the same category. एक ज basket na character हो. But it is possible for you to find out the difference between Shakuni, Duryodhan, Karna, Dushasan, Dhritarashtra. આ બધા છે એક જ બ્રાન્ડના, એક જ કેટેગરીના, બરાબર? દુષ્ટ બધા. But when you listen to them, you come to know that this must be uttered by Duryodhan, that must be uttered by Dhritarashtra, that must have been uttered by Dushasan or Shakuni. Why? This is the capacity of the poet. Language. He doesn't intermingle. Even among the Pandavas, all the 5 Pandavas will use 5 different types of language. And you can come to know what Arjun can speak and what Bhim can speak, though they may have the same intentions. So such confusion should not take place. If it takes place, that is a dosh, which is language specific. He classifies literature into different literary forms. For example, he says that if you refer to content, what is the content of the text? Then content-wise, there are 4 categories of literature. One is Devadi Charit Kavya. What you do is, that is a literary text in which you speak of the characters or the incidents which are known or which are understood as having taken place. If certain reader doesn't know, doesn't mean that society doesn't know. If you write a historical novel, say The Tale of Two Cities, then it will fall under this category, Devadi Charit Vrutta. Devadi Charit doesn't mean only gods and goddesses. Whatever has happened, it speaks of French Revolution, an event which is known in history, which is known by the people. You are reconstructing it. Similarly, Ramcharit Katha, Devadi Charit, because story of Ram did exist, and you are re-narrating the story of Ram. Or you are re-narrating story of somebody else. Somebody writes Krishnayan, which is again falling under the same category, Devadi Charit. So content-wise, a text can be falling into the category of Devadi Charita Vrutta, or it can be Utpadya Vastu Yukta. Utpadya Vastu Yukta means you are telling something fictional. There is no character in reality called mere salt. I am referring to Kafka's, not Kafka, but Albert Camus' novel, The Outsider, where your protagonist is called Muir-Salt. Did Mr. Muir-Salt ever exist? We don't know. It is a purely imaginary character. Or you have, these days very popular text, Harry Potter. There is no Harry in reality. It is purely creation of the author. So that will fall under the category of Utpadya Vastu Yukta. Third is Kalashrita Vastu Yukta. When you read a text, you come to know significantly about one or the other kala. Or if you know the kala very well, then you will understand it very well. You have, for example, texts which refer to the life and works of artists. If you are yourself an artist, then you will understand the text better because you are aware of one kala. So sometimes the text can be kala shrita. The content is based on kala. And if you know that kala, if there are war novels and you have fought as a soldier, you will understand it better because it is that kala. So kala shrita. And fourthly, Sastra Dharit Vastu Yukta. One or the other texts are based on one or the other Shastra. Shastra means theory, thought, ideas. If you know the ideas very well, then you understand the text better. You have existential works, right? So if you know the theory of existentialism, then you will understand better. Minays, you will understand it better. Because these are one or the other Shastra. If you know the psychology very well, psychology is a shastra, then you will understand certain psychological novels better, psychological poems better. Why? Because you have the base of shastra. Sometimes the texts are based on shastra, the way they are based on kala. So for him, these are the four categories. Any text of the world can be put under one of the four categories. And you would see how very broad, no doubt, but how significant, how correct he is. Then form-wise, he classifies literature into five categories. Pama gives five basic literary forms. And you know, even up to 20th century, the Western world classified literature into three categories: poetic, dramatic, and narrative. But in the 6th century, Bama classifies into five. He says Sargabadda Kavya, literary text which is in chapters, which is in books, which is organized in multiple long passages. They are Sargabadda. Novel falls into this category. Epic falls into this category, where you have books or chapters, and all of them together make one text. So text can be very big, very large. So this is one category, which is one form. On the other hand, you also speaks of Anibadda Kavya. Anibadda means it can be haiku, it can be a sher, it can be a shairi, it can be a small, you can say ghazal, it can be a sonnet, which is Anibadda, which doesn't have chapters, which comes to an end in a few lines. So that is Anibadda. So there are two types of compositions, small compositions and big compositions. Both of them deal with certain ideas, specific idea or a certain story. And therefore, Sargabadda and Anibadda. Then he says, Abhinayat. One literary form is meant for Abhinay, for enactment, what we call drama. That is also literature, but that is meant for enactment on the stage. You show it. And then he speaks of two other narrative forms. One is Akhyayika. Akhyayika is that narrative form which is narrated by one of the characters himself or herself. When you talk about yourself, it is called Akhyan. When you talk on a certain idea, it is called Vyakhyan. So Akhyan is about yourself. Nalakhyan is Nal tells his story to us. It is called Nalakhyan. There are so many Akhyans in Mahabharata, and they are all narrated by the characters themselves. And then he says Katha. Katha is also a story, but which is told by third person, not one of the characters. If I tell you the story of Arjun, it is Katha. If Arjun tells his own story, it is Akhyan. So for him, there are five categories: Sargabadda, Anibadda, Abhinayarth, Akhyayika, and Katha. So there are five literary forms, according to him. When you go to Anandvardhan, third person, because I will have to hurry up, otherwise I will not be able to finish. Anandvardhan is one of the most impressive, most appealing, you can say, Indian poeticians. And he also very comprehensively looks at Kavya. He categorizes Kavya into three: Uttam, Madhyam, and Adam. That literature can be Uttam, literature can be Madhyam, and literature can be Adam. And his definition is very simple but very meaningful. Uttam is, that every text has meaning also, and it has a body and it has soul. For him, Dhvani is the soul of Kavya. He says when there is a text The text says something. Fine. What is said rather than how it is said is very important. Then it is Uttam Kavya. The very content of the text is so grand, so impressive, that it is not so much, you can say, altered by the outward text, or you can the physical text, the verbal text. The non-verbal text is so important. No doubt that non-verbal text is suggested, implied by the verbal text. If there is no verbal text, there will be no non-verbal text. But when that non-verbal text, which goes to the readers very impressively and appeals to him, gives him what is called rasanubhava, then that is great work, Uttam Kavya. And he calls it Rasadhvani. Rasadhvani Kavya is the Uttam Kavya. That is, a particular text, in fact, gives you Rasanubhava. And you are so much, in participation of the Rasa, that it leads to you to so many other experiences. There is echo in your mind. The text is already completed by you, but the text still remains in your mind and keeps on giving joy and pleasure, what is called aesthetic pleasure to you even afterwards. Then that is Uttam Kavya. તમે ફિલ્મ જોઈ આવ્યા અને પછી 10 દિવસ સુધી ભૂલી શક્યા નહીં. Recollecting one or the other scene, one or the other dialogue, one other character, you still keep on enjoying, then that is a great work. Then that is a great work, because the overall impression is so powerful. There is Uttam Kavya. Madhyam Kavya is, content is very good, everything is fine, but what was suggested was also known to us. The way it was suggested is important, very impressive. You are impressed by the physical text of the literary text, or you can say the verbal body of the text. What is conveyed is secondary. How it is conveyed becomes primary. You are impressed by the way you say, kya baat hai, kya baat hai. This kya baat hai are normally not Uttam Kavya. Or you haven't been able to understand the deeper text. You are simply impressed by the external text. But where the deeper text is less impressive and the overt text is more impressive, it is called Guni Bhutvyan Kavya, and that is Madhyam Kavya. It is certainly a Kavya, but it is second in category. And third, Adham Kavya is, it doesn't convey anything other than what you have said. What is narrated in the verbal text is in fact everything that the text has to say. You can make paraphrase and yet convey the same meaning. But when you try to paraphrase and you lose the meaning, then that is great work. But when you do the paraphrase and still do not lose the meaning, it is Adham Kavya. It is third category, lowest category of Kavya. Anand Vardhan says that there are two types of meaning. One is Vachya meaning, that is the verbal meaning, the textual meaning. Other is Pratiyamana meaning, the meaning which emerges in you later while you read. The word does have its own meaning, but when you read the entire paragraph, when you read the entire stanza, when you read the entire text, it conveyed something more than what the words would have suggested themselves. That is called a Pratiyaman meaning. He says that ordinary texts do not have dhvani. Great works only have dhvani. Because dhvani is something which is suggested to you, which is not in the text. Nothing is, it is that meaning which is not found in the verbal text at all. You read a text, then you forget the words and you continue to derive meaning. The meaning that you have derived, in fact, is not expressed by the given words. They are simply suggested by the given words. Then that is dhvani. And such a dhvani you find in great works of art. And that is the beauty of the text. When you read, for example, Animal Farm, very ordinary story. It has its own, you can say, implied meaning also, figurative meaning. But it goes beyond that. That text keeps on reminding you of so many different patterns of life which have been repeated in the world so many times. It refers to one universal pattern of life which happens in this fashion. And now, even in future also, if you understood the text very well, you can come to know that if this is the part of the plot, then the next phase would be this. And even then it would be that. Because the author is able to capture the universal pattern of happening. And therefore it reminds you of so many other things, depending on what you have read, what you are aware of. Then that is that dhvani, which is called a vyanjana. Uses three terms. Abhidha, these terms you can keep in your mind. Abhidha, Lakshana, Vyanjana. Abhidha is dictionary meaning. Lakshana is implied meaning, figurative meaning. And Vyanjana is suggestive meaning or suggested meaning, which is actually dhvani. He classifies dhvani broadly into three categories. He says rasa dhvani, alankar dhvani, vastu dhvani. Vastu dhvani is of the lowest type, where dhvani is revealed by the content of the text. Alankar dhvani is that dhvani where the meaning is suggested by the way in which the things are suggested. Had it been said in ordinary sense, then it could not have suggested some new meaning. But because it has been said in a certain fashion, it leads to one or the other dhvani. And rasa dhvani is you are given rasanubhava. You are given an aesthetic experience. And out of that aesthetic experience, some new meanings emerge. So he gives importance to alankar, gun. He takes due note of everything that has been said earlier, whether it is riti, alankar, rasa, guna, everything he takes note of. And then he gives equal weightage to all. How much is important and what? And then he says most important thing is meaning. Because it is the meaning which travels. And it is the meaning of the text which makes the text meaningful. And therefore, it is dhvani. Anandvardhan is so impressive that he did not allow Vaman to grow. That is, Vaman's theory, in fact, got forgotten very easily because Anandvardhan was there. And secondly, later on came Kuntak. Kuntak is very impressive. But even Kuntak could not become so impressive till Anandvardhan's theory was still in circulation. The Dhvani theory, in fact, dimmed even the Vakrokti theory as well. But Kuntak is very, very significant as a theorist. And he, in fact, modifies, he updates what you call Bhama. Kuntak is updated Bhama. Or you can say the updated version of Bhama. For example, it doesn't say Shabdartho Sahitav Kavyam. He says Shabdartho Sahitav is fine, but there should be something in addition also. Only Shabd and Arth go hand in hand doesn't become Kavya. It must have some other qualities also. Then he refers to other qualities. And then he comes to this basic idea of what is Vakrokti. And he says it must give Ahlad. If it is not Ahlad Karini, it is not Kavya. Shabdartha Sahita, but if it doesn't give Ahlad, joy, aesthetic experience, it is not kavya. Secondly, says it should please not anyone. Sometimes even the very, you can say, ordinary, or sometimes even very, how to say, very cheap things also give lot of entertainment. Does it mean it is kavya? There can be kavya which makes you laugh a lot, feel joy a lot, because it has such things which are not considered to be uchita. No. Kavya should impress not ordinary, but those who know Kavya Shastra, those who are well versed in Kavya, those who are in company of Kavya. These experts, and therefore it says that text which impresses the people who are in the field of Kavya, that is Kavya. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry gives certificate this is a very bad Kavya or this is a very good Kavya, that certification has no value. But if Eliot says this is a good Kavya, or Matthew Arnold said this is a good Kavya, or Aristotle say this is not a good Kavya, then that is something to be taken note of. And so he gives, or he adds one more aspect, that Kavya should impress those who are experts in that field. And since he highlights so much Kavya, therefore he says a Kavi is he must be highly talented, he must have rich sensibility, he must be a scholar, he must know how to use Vakrata. And then he speaks of different kinds of Vakrata. He speaks of 6 kinds of Vakrata. It is Vakrata which brings Kavya into existence. For example, Varna Vakrata. What you do is you make a beautiful use of letters or sounds. You come across number of poems where this Varna is important. You may not come across them in prose, but in Kavya. Kavya in the very strict sense of the term, as we mean today. So where Varna is beautifully used, then it becomes automatically one type of Vakrata. And when Vakrata is there, it becomes a Kavya. You do not have Varna Vakrata in Shastra or in any text which is other than Kavya. Then he speaks of Pada Purvarda Vakrata. That is, you make creative use of language. And what you often do is, you make use of, Pada Purvarda means the words. You make modifications in words in one way or the other. For example, મને કેડ કાંટો વાગ્યો, કોઈને કાંટો વાગે તો ક્યાં વાગે? પગમાં વાગે. બહુ તો હાથમાં વાગે, બોર વીણવા જાય તો. પણ કેડે શું કામ વાગે? But કેડ કાંટો વાગ્યો means it has some vakrata in this. Then you do not go by the literal meaning. This is indication to you that you go for some other meaning rather than the verbal meaning. Fine. You take any kavya. For example, love is not love that alters and alteration finds. This is beautiful use of words. It is beautifully said also, and it is beautifully meant also. Then when you say it doesn't bend, then what is this bending? Is it verbal? It is not verbal. It means so many other things. So like this, you have Padapurvartha Vakrata. You use the words, but you do not mean what the words normally mean. You mean something other than what it means in dictionary. That is Vakrata. And number of people, number of great creative writers have given new meanings to the words. In fact, the dictionaries keep on enriching themselves by such creative uses of the words. You have Padaparartha Vakrata, where Pratyaya, or it is called Pratyaya Vakrata, where what you do is, you do not use the grammatical terms, because you have, if you go by grammar, then there are certain categories of words which have their own specific meanings. They are content words, and there are certain grammatical words. They are used to bring content words together. Preposition, conjunction, these are grammatical items. Nouns, adjectives, adverbs, verbs, they are content words. So when you use such grammatical items differently, then that is also Vakrata. If you look at Lokagit, and in so many Lokagits, in fact, you are deliberately making use of wrong pratyay, which you normally do not use. You may call it ungrammatical. Critics have found Shakespeare to be full of ungrammatical utterances, because they will not be grammatical as per Wren and Martin. But does it mean that that is not English? That is English. That is better English, literary English. And then he made you also use language in that particular fashion. So that is, but these three, I'm not giving a lot of importance so far as Vakrata is concerned. The other three are more important. One is Vakya Vakrata. Vakya Vakrata means you have made a statement, but that statement is unusual. And because it is unusual, it doesn't become meaningless, but it becomes more meaningful. Then that is Kavya. It is called Vakya Vakrata. Man, the child is the father of man. When Wordsworth says this is an example of Vakya Vakrata. Child is the father of man. Normally, what you say, just the opposite. But does it mean that Wordsworth had gone mad? No. Wordsworth really meant, but it did not mean what you would understand by the verbal text. Here, the entire statement is altogether different. It has deeper meaning. A friend in need is a friend indeed. You have Varna Vakrata also here, but you have Vakya Vakrata also here. Because you are trying to define friendship in a different context. So deed and indeed, need and indeed, it may be Varna, Pras, but then something else. There are so many, and so many such utterances. It is better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. This is an example of Vakya Vakrata, where you have uttered something by altering the normal conventions, and therefore it becomes literary. But more than that, you have Prakarana Vakrata. What you do is you take a text which is already in existence, and then what you do is you make one or two minor changes, or you change the sequence of the events. And when you do this, this is your creativity, this is your Vakrata. When you do this, then altogether new meaning emerges. This is Prakarana Vakrata. You drop something which is Prakarana Vakrata. For example, but when you do Prakarana Vakrata, you do not change the overall sentiment. Tulsidas has made many changes. Yes. Questions?
It is 4:20.
Okay.
So you complete in 5-10 minutes, and
I'll
then
complete in
5
2-3
minutes for
minutes.
questions.
I'll complete in
Okay.
2-3 minutes. Yeah, and then we'll certainly move to questions.
Sure.
But when you go for Prakarana Vakrata, you do not change the overall rasa of the text. You do not change the overall meaning of the text. If you change the meaning of the text, it becomes Prabandha Vakrata. But if you do not change, it becomes Prakarana Vakrata. For example, Tulsidas makes number of changes when he writes Ramcharitmanas. Number of things do not happen exactly in the same way as they happen in Valmiki Ramayana. But even then, Ram remains hero, Sita remains heroine, Ravan remains villain. The overall message is same. Your impression of Ram and Sita and Hanuman do not change. But this is an example of Prabandha Vakrata, where you would do something which doesn't happen in Valmiki Ramayana. For example, Tulsidas brings in Agni Pariksha scene, where Sita goes for Agni Pariksha. Ram asks Sita to go for Agni Pariksha. This is Prabandha Vakrata. In Valmiki, Ram doesn't ask Sita to give Agni Pariksha. In Tulsidas, Ram asks Sita to do Agni Pariksha. So there is a change in the action on the part of Agni Pariksha is there in Valmiki also. But there Sita herself does it. Not that Ram demands. Here Ram demands. and the gives. This is Prabandha Vakrata. But even then, he does in such a fashion that no doubt today's feminists are angry on Ram, but the conventional readers, the readers who are trained in a certain tradition, in a certain culture, in fact, they don't respond in the same way. But because now we have borrowed so many ideas from outside and we started thinking in that particular fashion, therefore, we also see what the West would see. And I don't say that is wrong or right, that is not an issue. But here, where up to, you can say, 19th century, nobody read Agni Pariksha scene in a different way. It was read as it was, and they continued to have the same response as Valmiki had generated. This is Prabandh Vakrata. But in Prakran Vakrata, what happens is you very often alter altogether. If you take Amish Tripathi, then he is involved in Prabandh Vakrata, where the entire meaning changes, the message changes, very often the impression changes. But when you do it, because in case of Amish Tripathi, it is not even Prabandha Vakrata, it is just perversion, third rate perversion. But in case of Bas, Bas also tries to change the character of Karna and Duryodhan in his place. If you refer to Karna Bharam, if you refer to Urubhangam, then your impression of Karna and your impression of Duryodhan changes. Duryodhan becomes a hero. Karna also becomes a hero. Both of them are villains in Mahabharata. Or you take Abhigyan Shakuntalam, where the character of Shakuntala undergoes a change. That is a Prabandha, not Prakran, but Prabandha Vakrata. Because that Shakuntala is different from Vedavyasa's Shakuntala. Dushyant of Vedavyas and Dushyant of Kalidas are different. But even though they are different, in fact, and your impressions change, in Vedavyas you feel so angry on Dushyant. You do not feel so angry on Dushyant in Kalidas. In Vedavyas, you are so much angry on Duryodhan. That doesn't happen for you in Bas. Because what Bas has done is he has done Prabandha Vakrata. He's made certain changes, or he has organized in such a fashion, or has gone for commission and omission in such a way, though he doesn't play with the text, he doesn't alter the text. Even then, your impression of the character changes. This is an example of Prabandha Vakrata. And that brings into existence new literary texts. So according to Kuntak, new literary texts keep on coming due to one or the other type of vakrata on the part of the poet. So this vakrata is creativity. So this creativity is very important for Kuntak, and that is what makes him character specific, poet specific literature. And therefore he says there are three types of style marga. He used the word marga for Shaili or marga for Riti. Sukumar, Vichitra, and Madhyam. Sukumar is where the poet is so great that even the great things happen so smoothly. Valmiki, Vedavyas, Kalidas, they are Sukumar Kavi. Then there are some Vichitra Kavi. Vichitra is not a very bad word. Vichitra means they are very tough, very complex. But their complexity is not easily understood. Bharvi, for example, is a Vichitramargi Kavi. That is, you will have to try hard. Eliot is a Vichitramargi poet. Shakespeare is a Sukumar poet. But Eliot is Vichitramargi. You will have to be very well equipped to understand Eliot. Third is Madhyam, who are having both the qualities, who exist between Sukumar, not exactly Sukumar, not exactly Vichitra, but between the two. Sometimes they are A, sometimes they are B. He speaks of 6 Kavyagun, last point, because we had talked about 20 Kavyagun on the part of Vaman, but this man gives only 6. Madhurya, Prasad, Lavanya, Abhijatya, Auchitya, Saubhagya. Lavanya is no doubt beautiful, but beauty which is not the beauty of the part, but beauty of the overall text, that is called Lavanya. So he, for the first time, brings in the issue of structure. That beauty emerges out of the structure. Therefore, Lavanya. Somebody is Lavanya Mai means his or her physical structure is so nice. Therefore, he or she appears so beautiful. Not that that is fair skin or nose and eyes and lips are so beautiful. No. Structure. So, structure has its own beauty. In fact, so Lavanya is an important merit of Kavya. First time Kuntak uses. And who can bring Lavanya? Great poet. And therefore, it is the job of the poet to bring Lavanya. Abhijatya means novelty. He should bring creatively new meanings, new things. That is called Abhijatya. Auchitya, if it doesn't have Auchitya, then again it is not Kavya. And Saubhagya. What is the Saubhagya as a quality? Kavya good. Saubhagya means it gives you instant joy. When you are instantly transformed and transferred to some other world, that is called Saubhagya. So Madhurya Prasad, Lavanya is a new word. Abhijatya is a new word. Auchitya already existed, but Saubhagya is a new term. He gives three new terms in the form of Kavya Gun and propounds his theory of Vakrokti. So these four are more important, very central in Indian poetics, and from examination point of view, we can certainly focus on them. This is such a broad area. Indian poetics, a journey of 1,000 years, is very difficult to comprise or make very compact in 2 hours. But I tried to bring something very superficial to your mind, particularly examination oriented things in your mind, and some basic concepts, so that in case there are certain analytical questions where you have to involve your understanding of the concepts very well, then you can certainly do it. Thank you very much. And now I leave the session open for question answer. Pranabhai.
Yes, if the students have any questions,
Yes.
please feel free. I think it was a very well-grounded sort of lecture, and you covered a lot of ground in 2 hours. So they must be satisfied with it,
Thank you.
and they must be spellbound by this, because you narrated the history, you narrated one by one uh, theoretician
Yeah.
and critiques, etc. And majority of it was very in-depth. It was not superficial. You presented an in-depth knowledge of poetics, Sanskrit poetics. I have Apte's Sanskrit poetics, and I was thinking
Okay.
of reading it. But today I listened to the whole lecture, and now I think I won't have to read. And there is a student in our department. He was making notes, and I was helping him making notes. So thank you very much, sir.
It is
Very
my
kind of
pleasure.
you
My
to
pleasure. And
spare time for.
I convey my best wishes to all the students for their
Hmm.
good performance in NET exam. And I thank the department and Pranabhai, particularly you. Thank,
Okay,
Excuse
thank
me,
you
sir.
very much.
Excuse
okay.
me,
Yes,
sir.
huh? Yes, if you have
Good
question.
afternoon, sir. Yeah, good
Good
afternoon,
afternoon.
sir. So thank you so much for a wonderful session. I have made note of many things, but I missed
Hmm.
on one point where you talked about three types of dhwani.
Hmm.
One was rasa dhwani, another was alankar dhwani. I missed out the third part. Can you just
Third
repeat
was
that?
Vastu Dhvani. Vastu Dhvani.
Oh,
Vastu means content. Vastu, Alankar, and Ras.
okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir, there is a question that
Please.
can you please refer any specific book for to refer the Indian poetics?
In fact, now there are so many books available, number of books. But Seturaman is, I would be giving first preference. Then Professor Ganesh Devi's book on Indian poetics is there. These two are very, very significant. And one book which came out recently, in fact, just before his death, Dr. Avdesh Kumar Singh has brought out his book on Indian poetics. So you refer to these three. V.S. Seturaman, then Ganesh Devi, and Avdesh Kumar Singh. Otherwise, there are hundreds of books available on Indian poetics. But for a primary reading, these three are very good. And they are in English. All the three are in English.
I am
Okay, sir.
thinking of giving them Seturaman's book
Huh.
this year.
Okay.
We gift the books to those who score more than 60% marks.
Very good. And it's an excellent book, really.
Yes, I have with me that
Yes.
book, Seturaman's book.
Yes. Even
But I did
Avdesh
not
Kumar
know
Singh's
about Ganesh
book is
Devi
also good, and
Avdesh
so is
book.
the case with Ganesh Devi. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. Again,
Okay. Thank you very
there
much.
is one more question. Sorry.
Okay.
One
Please.
more question.
Please.
Uh,
Anyone?
Sir, there is a
Yes.
question from Devang Darji on YouTube that he would like to know about the problem of meaning in Kavya in the terms of Shabda Shakti, Shabda Vritti in Kavya.
Shabda Shakti and
Shabda Vritti.
Shabda Vritti.
Yes, sir.
Is it there?
Sir, he is listening to you on YouTube.
Okay. From where did he come across these terms? I don't say this term do exist. Certainly do exist. Because these words are used by different people. So actually, who has used this word accordingly? In fact, I can say. Otherwise, it simply refers to it. These terms are not used by any of the theories. These terms are used by the critics of these theories, where they refer to, you can say, the power of the word. How words are so impressive, so powerful that they can, modify your thinking, they can modify your vision, they can modify your perception. The words are so powerful that way. But nothing, any unusual thing doesn't happen. So this is Shabda Shakti, and Shabda Vritti, primarily means Vritti refers to style. It refers to way in which it is uttered, the way in which it is used. So how that word is used, that refers to Shabda Vritti. So Shabda Shakti and Shabda Vritti. Vritti is used by Bharat Muni, later on by others also. Fine.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
But for NET exam, do not go into such details. You refer to what is very obvious, what is very much in circulation. Fine.
Anyone else? I think no one.
Sir,
Thank you very
there
much.
is one question. Sir, could you please provide the literal meaning of Vyabhichari Bhav?
Vyabhichari Bhav means temporary feelings. Vyabhichari means moving, which move from one point to another. That is called Vyabhichar. Not Vyabhichar the way we understand in Gujarati. It is also called Sanchari Bhav. So Vyabhichari Bhav is temporary feeling, which is not a sthai bhav in you. On occasion, તમને કોના પર ગુસ્સો આવે. ક્રોધ is one thing. પણ આપણે જેને કહીને ચીડ is another thing. Irsha is, you do not all the time feel irsha. That is sanchari bhav, vyabhichari bhav. So vyabhichari is not something perverted, but it is something which is always in existence for a limited period of time.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I think now there is no one. Okay. See you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. See you. Thank you very much again.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
There is an announcement for the attendance that the attendance link will remain the same, but after the online session gets over, you have to put your mark of present on the same link which is uploaded on the Google Classroom. So please mark your present on the attendance link so that you can give the test conducted by the department.